I created a ready-to-drink cocktail in Dallas, Texas called BuzzBallz. It sells at airlines, arenas, liquor stores, grocery stores. We might have a Super Bowl ad this year, which is the first time ever.
Recently, you were featured by Forbes amongst America's richest self-made women.
I please myself. Please yourself. I bought machines from China that gave me electric shock. It's like stick your hand in there.
So what comes first, the brand or the product?
I think the container comes first. The machinery has to be custom for this type of container. The molds have to be custom because in today's customer buying world, they're looking for something different, something that gives them a certain feeling.
So if someone is starting alcohol or beverage brand, what advice would you like to give them?
It delivers what it says it's going to do. It tastes good, it's reasonably priced, and it's a unique shape, and people remember it. Now, could Coke come in and do that? Could anybody come in, a big company come in and try to knock us off? Yes. And are there lawsuits for doing that? Yes. But it's better just to buy the company, so work for me. Shit doesn't smell any better with age. So, if you have a toxic employee, you need to cut ties. I started a school at BuzzBallz so that my employees could come to work. They could drop off their kid at school, which was BuzzBallz, sit there in a meeting with you, and they're going, and you're like giving out the goals and whatever you want to have done. And they're, and then water cooler moment happens and they go and they...
This episode is brought to you by Phyllo, the universal solution for social media background checks and influencer vetting. If you work in background verification, brand reputation, image building, public relations, or influencer marketing, you know how crucial fast and reliable background screening is. With Phyllo Social Screening, you can run AI-powered social media background checks in just 15 minutes, spotting red flags, news mentions, and adverse media across platforms. Trusted by leaders like Global Background Screening, Gigan, Prembly, and Essential Screens, Phyllo Social Screening helps you save millions of dollars in crisis management. Check out the link in the description to book a demo today.
Hi, this is Shubham,
Hi, I'm Akhil.
and we welcome you to ShelfLife, the CPG podcast, where we bring out the stories of your favorite brands with useful, actionable insights. Our guest today is Merrilee Kick. She is the founder and strategic advisor at BuzzBallz. She's also the CEO at Gourmetland Foods, founded in 2009. At Carrollton, Texas, Dallas Metro, BuzzBallz makes ready-to-drink cocktails across spirit, wine-based lines under BuzzBallz, BuzzBallz chillers, cream-based, and biggies. We'll try to unpack all that, in our podcast today. Their positioning is fun, high ABV, single-serve cocktails in distinctive spherical packaging. Brand mission is to reinvent the happy hour. So let's hope the next hour is also an happy hour. Merrilee, welcome to ShelfLife.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Please tell us about your personal journey. It's so interesting. We would love you to tell it to our audience also.
Back in 2009, I was getting my MBA from Texas Women's University, and I was looking for a project that I could do for my MBA thesis project. And I was grading papers. I was a high school teacher at the time, so I was grading papers by the pool and came up with this idea as I was drinking a cocktail that, I shouldn't have a glass container by the pool. I should have a plastic container. And then I thought, I have this little round votive candle that looks like a snowball. And I thought that would be pretty cool to make a little party ball. And so came up with this plastic spherical ball-shaped container, but I couldn't figure out the lid situation. So I was actually in Walmart buying some tennis balls for my son's high school tennis, and noticed that they had a plastic container with a metal lid. So I cut it open and figured out how it was done, and created a CAD design and took it to China and got it made. And after a while, I was like, I'm going to go to China and see how they're making it. And then I figured out how to buy my own machinery and bring that all back to Dallas so I could hire people in the United States. It's easier to be able to make it without having to float across the water.
Yeah, I was just saying that, love it how you make it sound so easy. But of course, there's so much to it.
There's a lot to it.
How did you find your vendors in China? Did you just go on internet? And this is 2009.
Yeah, in 2009. So, I'm a teacher by trade, right? And I'm an engineer. I worked for Ross Perot at EDS, which became General Motors, which became Hewlett Packard. So like I was a systems engineer, and that's what, by training what I was. Uh, and so anyway, I was used to researching and Googling things and, doing my best just to dig into things. And I just used Alibaba. Alibaba is an app, right? And it usually has a lot of European or Asian types of companies that provide services, plastics, metals, cuckoo clocks, anything, whatever you want to sell. So I found a partner over there that was willing to put up with me and listen to my CAD design ideas and my craziness, and he would work with me to help me create it. So it was kind of fun.
And what are the hero products?
So the Hito products, what are
Yeah,
Hito?
The bestsellers, yeah,
the
hero.
best-selling products of
Oh,
BuzzBall.
oh, okay. The best-selling products of well, the cocktails, the little round cocktails are the biggest sellers, but the biggies, they're bowling ball size, and those are coming on strong, really strong. So we've got two of those in the BuzzBallz Arena brand, and then there's different flavor profiles within each. So I think I was the only woman-owned distillery, winery, and brewery because I could make a malt base, a spirit base, or a wine base cocktail. And I formulated them all to taste identical to each other. So you didn't know what the alcohol base was because it was neutral, but the flavoring tastes exactly the same. The alcohol percent was exactly the same. And so when I create a new brand, a new flavor, it's usually, okay, it's a 15% alcohol item and it's going to taste like mango with chili or something like that in it. And I had to make it taste the same across all lines. So in terms of what SKU sells the best, we have our margaritas, our chili mango, our blue product that came out. It was crazy viral how it went crazy. It was a raspberry, blue raspberry. What was it called? Anyway, I'll come back to that. I'm drawing a blank, but berry cherry limeade was what it was called. That's right, berry cherry limeade. But it went crazy and just really sold like crazy. And all the Ritas, all the cream base, we have some cream base ones, the chalk teas. We have eggnog coming out. We've got some pumpkin coming out. And just all kinds of SKUs. And it just really depends on what your flavor profile is, whether you like sour or sweet, creamy or not creamy, so.
But across all of these, which one is the top selling SKU?
Well, are you talking about in India or
No,
China
no,
or where?
globally, as a company, when you're looking at it. In one of the video I saw, you mentioned California is your largest market, then Texas. So maybe in the largest market or globally, it might be.
The berry cherry limeade in the last year was a top seller, but so is the chalk teas and so is the regular margarita. Those are our top sellers, but then we normally just keep track of the top 6 SKUs, and it's by flavor profile. So the chocolate, the strawberry margarita, the regular margarita, the chili mango, the pina colada, um, and the berry cherry limeade. So I mean, those were the top 6 SKUs.
You try to do it based on flavor profile, then a particular SKU. Is that correct?
I made them all taste the same because it was important to the consumer to walk into a 7-Eleven or a liquor store or a New York bodega and pick up a BuzzBall, recognize the iconic shape, and then go, okay, I know what I'm going to get when I buy a BuzzBall. I know what it's going to taste like. Like if you buy a hamburger from McDonald's, in the UK, it should taste the same as a hamburger from McDonald's in Japan or McDonald's in America. So it's like that.
Got it. And how much? So BuzzBall got acquired by Sazerac company in 2024. How has been?
Sazerac, yep.
Yeah. How has been the in terms of innovation and growth? Where does BuzzBall stand now?
It's a different kind of growth. It's more marketing focused, I think, than before. And they're doing a whole bunch more on bigger promotions, like something at an NBA game or an NHL game or an NFL game, those kinds of big activations we typically didn't do. We were more ground roots, social media, that kind of thing. But I hear, and this isn't confirmed, but I hear we might have a Super Bowl ad this year, which is the first time
Wow.
ever. Yeah, I mean that's big time. So, I would love that. It's a wait and see though.
Oh, congrats. I mean, we're,
Congratulations.
it would be exciting to see.
Yeah, so a lot of the innovation Sazerac is doing now was stuff that I created with my team before 2024 when we sold in May of 2024 to Sazerac. So they're activating those and launching those. It takes time to get them to market and get all the campaigns and everything set up.
And as you build the company, you mentioned you initially focused more on social media marketing or retailer channels. Can we just talk about like if in your early days of building BuzzBalls, how were you building the distribution? Was it the distribution like selling by retailers, the key thing, or marketing? How much was your time allocated as well as resources allocated in these sites?
Typically we would allocate about 10% of our budget to marketing. But that included everything top to bottom, so ads, social media, activations, tastings, point of sale, all those kinds of things. What was the other part of the question?
And
Uh,
in terms of sales, so you said sales and marketing entire budget was 10%?
no, marketing
Yeah,
is 10%.
marketing.
It was
And
about 10%. That back when I ran it. I don't know what it is now. It may be more.
and how about sales? How much would
How
be
was
sales? How much would be
I don't
sales as a
just
percentage?
yeah, I don't disclose that. That's a private company question, and so we'll stay away from that.
Okay, sure.
But it was a lot.
Okay.
Wonderful. Merrilee, recently you were featured by Forbes, amongst America's richest self-made women.
I know, can you believe it? It's crazy.
We are so glad that we have you on the show. Uh, Reflecting, values created through the deal, brand's growth, and of course your creativity. What does it mean to you now?
To be listed on Forbes list or
I mean,
to
you're
be
self-made, and I guess a lot of women in America now look up to you. So it's a responsibility, I suppose. So, how do you handle it?
I mean the responsibility is there definitely. People watch what I say, watch how much I drink, watch what I eat. I mean they watch what I say. Everything I say carries weight to somebody and it's easily offensive, if I say the wrong thing. So whereas before I could just shoot from the hip, I still shoot from the hip, but I now offend people. So uh, so there's that. I think that having that honor of being on the Forbes list is a special thing, and it's something in my wildest dreams I never thought that would happen to me. I just wanted to get by. I just wanted to be able to make $100,000 a year, and be able to pay for my kids' college. And, I mean, that's basically where I started. I didn't have these ideas of grandeur that I was going to make lots and lots of money from this company. But it just so happened that doing things myself, vertically integrating the company, and having such an awesome culture in my company where I would lead and people would come with me. I didn't stand there and just bark out orders and sit in my office on my pulpit. It was more of a, you know, I'm picking up trash off the floor. I want to see you pick up trash off the floor. I'm gonna clean this. I'm gonna pack that. We're gonna do this together, and we're gonna get through it, and we're gonna celebrate together and have fun together. And you're allowed to speak your mind to me and tell me ideas to make us better. I'm not afraid to hear that criticism or suggestion. So.
Okay, and what advice would you give to the 20-year-old Merrilee Kick to expedite her journey, if you want to, expedite the journey at all?
I think my 20-year-old self was more insecure about, just not having experience, living in this world, living around the world, being exposed to different cultures, different kinds of people, different kinds of businesses, and being a parent and being a teacher of high school students. You learn a lot about the ways of the world. You can almost tell if somebody's lying to you or not, and trust is a big factor. So to me, I think, building the right kind of culture for a team is really important. But when I was 20 years old, I was afraid to really speak my mind. And I was put into a company that was more autocratic, and didn't really want to hear what I had to say. They just wanted me to work 120 hours a week, and answer my pager when it went off in the middle of the night and show up, so that they didn't get penalized. I think that I would trust my instinct more. And it took me a while not to listen to other people in terms of, doing what they thought was best for me. Instead, it was like, okay, I'll listen to it, but I'm going to do what I think is best for me. So just getting that independence and strength to follow my own path and not worry so much about what other people are doing or not doing or pleasing them. I please myself. Please yourself.
That's a wonderful quote right there. Merrilee, you said you were a parent also at 20. So would you like to tell us about your family,
Oh,
your
no, not at
background?
20. Not at 20.
Okay.
At
Okay.
least I didn't think I had any children by the time I was 20.
So
I
please,
didn't have
please
kids till
remove
I
this
was
confusion and
25.
tell us.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had kids when I was 25, and or no, I got married when I was 25. Had kids at 28 and 31. So it was a little later for me. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think being a parent is really important to leading people because you understand empathy, you understand fairness over equality. And I bring that up because a lot of people beat the drum of equality, equality, women's rights, this, that, the other thing, everybody's rights. But really, it's about fairness. It's like who worked the hardest? They're the ones that get the reward. Who who shows up for me every day without complaining and then rolls up their sleeves and helps? That person gets rewarded. Not just the person that sits there and smokes a cigarette on the tailgate, and hangs out and, doesn't do anything because they're entitled. So no, it's more we're in this together. Let's do it together. And if there's some difficulty that we have to get through, the important thing is talking to your people and explaining your rationale, explaining why you want them to go down this particular journey with you or have them do certain things, because they're not just going to know. And if you just, give a dictative order for everybody to do this, there's going to be a lot of confusion and they're not going to want to join arm in arm to help you. So I think it's very important that everybody understands where you're going. And, being a parent helps that, because you have to explain it to people, like pretend like they're 5-year-olds, but they're not 5-year-olds, they're grown adults, but sometimes they have to hear it from a different perspective.
Interesting. I mean, we could deep dive over there, but that's a full topic in itself. Okay, so I'll switch gears, Merrily, and feel free to ignore these questions. So, can we talk about gross margins and can we talk about gross margins and then I can go accordingly?
I can't give you any numbers. I can give you some ideas.
Yeah,
Now, what I would usually focus on when I was starting my business was I was told by somebody in the film and television industry that I should do 30% for gross margin and 30% for expenses, and then I'd be left over with 30%, 30, 30, 30. But over time, as you scale and as things get cheaper for you for your cost of goods and you get smarter about how to get more volume, we were running closer to 60 to 65% margin for gross margin, which was great. And then our EBITDA was incredible and I had no debt. So, all of those things together made for a very profitable and interesting company for someone to buy.
And how much does it cost for liquid flavor packaging? How much is freight charges? How much is it? I know you mentioned retailer promo and discount may not be the right thing. And
Yeah,
what,
those are things we don't really talk about. There's a lot of things that go into building a brand. And one of the things is all the cost of the raw materials, and then there's also the cost of the taxes. So this is a regulated product. Alcohol is, tobacco is, and you pay somebody called the TTB, the Alcohol, Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. They're a federal government program that collects excise tax on anything you create. So anything I made, I would sell to a distributor, and upon that sale, I would be required to pay the federal government these excise taxes or sin taxes, as sometimes they're referred to. So, all of that rolled together, if you took our sales minus our, gross margin, you'd kind of figure out what the cogs were. But yeah, I can't talk numbers, so
uh, sure. And if, as you mentioned, building a brand, what's the piece that swings the most while building the brand? Is it, and you don't have to talk numbers, but if you have to drive revenue in a particular quarter, what is it you would pull the lever the most? Would it be something like retailer promos, discount, marketing? Uh, if in order to drive revenue or drive market share, which is
I'll
one lever you will
drive.
pull the most?
What would drive market share the most? Okay.
Yeah.
What would drive market share the most? Well, chain sales would drive um, a lot of, volume for sure. But in terms of marketing, I think that's what you're heading toward is what kind of marketing is most effective to drive sales. And typically that's displays. So displays on the floor, when you walk in, you see it, you see the product, you see a floor stack, you see a display rack, you see it cold on ice, you see it in the cooler. Those are the types of things that drive sales. I mean,
All
there's
right.
tons of promo things you can do as well, like social media and viral videos and those kinds of things that help a lot too. But all of it together is a unit, not just one thing. So, but in terms of if you didn't have any money, how would you do it? I would do social media and displays. If you can get those done, that would be a start.
Got it. And Merrilee, when you launch a new flavor or a new theme, what velocity do you need for it to stay on the shelf? First of all, how soon it has to be, on, let's say, on a 7-Eleven shelf, and how many promo rounds before you decide to keep it or cut it?
It's not something that we keep or cut. Typically, it's usually the retailer that makes that decision. And they're the ones that, it depends on the type of retailer when it comes to velocity. Like how many units are they selling in a month? Well, Walmart's going to sell more than a 7-Eleven might. But I mean, typically we reigned in C stores, convenience stores. So, people like the opportunity to have a grab and go item. And that's what we were, an impulse grab and go item. And it's an off-premise item, not something that's sold in a liquor store or, in a bar. I'm sorry, it was sold in a liquor store or a convenience store, not a bar, for off-premise. Tell me again if I'm answering your question or not.
Yeah, you answered my question.
Okay.
And can you give a differentiation between what is an on-premise and what is an off-premise product? Can
Yes,
you
yes,
explain
yes.
that in more detail?
So sorry about that mix up. So on premise means that you consume it on the premises. So like a bar or a restaurant or a cruise ship or an airplane, something like that. You're drinking it on the premises of that bonded facility. Um, a place like Walmart, 7-Eleven, the grocery store, those are off-premise places, because you're buying it and you're taking it home or taking it somewhere. You're drinking it off the premises. So that's what's the difference between on and off premise. Make
Got
sense?
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Merrily, bust a beverage industry myth for us.
I don't know if there is a myth, but to me, the most important things about the beverage industry is to know that A, it's a super fun industry. It is so much fun to be involved. I think it's probably one of the most exciting industries to be in, to tell you the truth. I love teaching too, but the beverage industry was just so much fun. I think that the most important thing about breaking into the beverage industry is relationships, because these are just people like you and me that are out there and they want to work with people that they like. You know, their jobs are boring for the most part, and they want to make it fun. So they want to hang out with people that make their job fun, because they forget how to have fun. They're so busy driving numbers. They're so busy getting beat up by suppliers that say you didn't sell enough, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. So for them, it's like it's refreshing for them to have somebody come in that's funny, that somebody they want to go to lunch with or go to dinner with and tell stories to, and just talk about life in general. And those types of things, those types of relationships are the ones that I think drive business.
This is actually very insightful because I think in most businesses this work and people generally ignore this fact. I think it's a very insightful point.
Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You could be in the film and television industry, you could be in any industry, and it's about relationships. The more networking that you do, the more people that but more importantly, people know you. And, you don't hide in the shadows of these networking events and hope people come up to you and talk to you. You go out, you shake hands, you talk to them about what you do, you find out what they do. And it's really important. This is another tip I would give you too. Be able to explain what you do in 5 words or less. I meet people that will say, I'm an AI guru, or I'm a this or that, or whatever. If your grandmother cannot understand what you do, you're not explaining it right. So it needs to be super simple. With BuzzBallz, I make booze. It's pretty simple. Now how do I make booze? Where do I make booze? Who buys the booze? Where does it sell? Where can I get it? Those are follow-on questions. But the first thing is I reinvented happy hour. I created a ready-to-drink cocktail in Dallas, Texas called BuzzBallz. It sells at airlines, arenas, liquor stores, grocery stores, convenience stores. You start getting into that. It sells in all 50 states and 42 countries, So those are the types of things that are the follow-on questions. But you start with, I make booze, as part of your elevator pitch. Make sure you get that elevator pitch down to where you can explain what it is you make, where you make it, who buys it, where can you buy it, is it a service? Is it a product? And so many people, you meet them and you shake their hand, you tell them your name, they tell you theirs. You can't understand their company name because it's some weird, ABGB, and, it's like named after their initials or something. And it's like, wow, that was really meaningful, that you came up with that great name. No one's going to remember that. But then just more importantly, be able to tell them what you do, and be able to explain it so that people can lean in. Because once they start with this question answer thing, And it's 5 minutes in and they're still going, so are you doing it this way? So you doing it that way? Can you show me a picture? I still don't get it, and 5 minutes in, if they still don't get it, then you're doing a terrible job, of explaining what you do.
Right.
So,
Merrily, tell
you
us
know,
the story behind the naming of the brand, BuzzBallz. How did you
BuzzBallz?
come?
Yeah, so I was a
Yeah.
high school teacher, right? And I was thinking, what describes this iconic container, you know? It's a ball, right? It looks like a ball. All the other things look like a can, a Coke can, a Sprite can, a Dr. Pepper can, a beer can. Everything's put in a can. But what happens underneath that can lid? I heard this horror story once. It was a beer company, and a mouse had crawled into a can, and then the lid was put on, the beer was sealed, and somebody was drinking the beer, and they took the tip up, and something hit their lip. And it just
Oh my
grossed me
God.
out to no end. I was so grossed out. I was like, I want to see what's inside that container before I drink it, now that I've had the mouse story. So anyway, I thought it would be kind of cool to have a translucent container where I could see underneath that lid. And then to do that labeling on that type of container was difficult as well. I didn't know how to get the screen print on there. I bought pad printers. I bought machines from China that gave me electric shock, because it didn't have a UL rated product on it. It's like stick your hand in there and zzz, it's like, ooh, that's not the right thing to do. Yeah, I mean, you just kind of figure things out, but yeah, it's a fun time.
So, what comes first, the brand or the product?
I think the container comes first. If you're selling a CPG type of item, I think the container is the most important part. So when you talk about Gourmetland, what I'm doing now, I'm kind of tinkering with the idea of Gourmetland. I didn't start it in 2009. I just started it a couple months ago. So I am designing containers in R&D. So that's what I'm doing. I'm deciding what containers and what kind of products that I want because I really want it to stand off the shelf. Because in today's customer buying world, they're looking for something different, something that gives them a certain feeling. And I think that that's something very much overlooked by most products. They go, I'm just going to copy so and then they copy so and they get a little bit of that margin of what so and so was making before they slice and dice it until it's parsed down to all the ankle biters that have possibly come into the world. But I think that the product that is going to sell is going to have an iconic shape and it's going to offer something meaningful to the buyer. It's going to make them feel a certain way, either prestigious or it's a relaxed feeling or it's a party feeling or like fun or it's a risque feeling. It's going to exude a personality. So this product is a person that you build that has a personality, and you have to create that first. The product that goes inside of it, you know, a sauce, a whatever, a beverage, it may be good, it may be mediocre. But if the packaging is great, that's where it starts because they won't buy it if the packaging is boring. So you won't get that first sale. And then you won't get residual sales because you didn't get the first sale. So you got to get the first sale. Then the liquid's got to be good and it's got to deliver what it says it's going to do. So when I created BuzzBallz, it was like, okay, it's a ball that gets you buzzed. Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, it delivers what it says it's going to do. It tastes good and it's reasonably priced and it's a unique shape and people remember it. When they walk into a store and they see a BuzzBall, they go, oh, that's a BuzzBall. regardless of whether it's a wine-based BuzzBall, spirit-based BuzzBall, malt-based BuzzBall, no matter where they are in the world, if they see BuzzBalls, they know it's a BuzzBall.
Because this container shape works very well, why has no one tried to copy this?
Because it's
Have you seen?
difficult. It's difficult to make. It's not a common thing. It's a little more expensive to make. You know, a Coke can might cost you, a can, just a regular can. Let's say I start a beer product. I'm going to go somewhere and buy an aluminum can, and I'm going to buy an aluminum lid. Well, that could cost me anywhere from 4 cents to 8 cents to 12 cents, depending on where I buy it from. And then somebody has to fill it and all of that, So it's like the machinery has to be custom for this type of container. The molds have to be custom. And it's made out of PET, which is a plastic. So most of these places are buying aluminum cans, aluminum lids. If they're buying plastic, then typically that machinery is really expensive. It's over $1 million for a piece of machinery. And not everybody that's starting a business has that kind of cash, and they don't have the know-how either, like how to make it work, having your own plastic farm. So that's complicated. Now, could Coke come in and do that? Could anybody come in, a big company come in and try to knock us off? Yes. And are there lawsuits for doing that? Yes, there are penalties for doing that. But it's better just to buy the company, so work for me.
Fantastic. And what is Gourmetland Foods? Can you
It's
talk about
nothing.
it?
It's nothing right now. It is R&D. It is making containers right now, and that's all I can tell you about it right now. It's
Okay.
what's next in my chapter, and it's going to deal with food and beverage, not alcohol, but food and beverage.
Got it, Merrilee. Can you share a story, incident, experience that has left a mark on you and really taught you a lesson that no book ever could?
Oh yeah, I've had tons of lessons. um, there was one day where I had to fire my plant manager. I found some things going on, some theft going on, and also some illegal documentation of temporary staff, faking social security numbers, faking, some things like that. So there were some improprieties going on, some theft going on, and he was complicit in all of this. So I had to walk him off the floor. Plus, I had to walk 350 temps off the floor. So these were temp workers that were working for me, because I had to set an example. Now, when you have 500 people in your company and you walk 350 people that are in production off the floor, it pretty much crucifies your production line. So what I did was I fired the plant manager, I fired all of the temps, I brought in who was left, and I said, guys, this is where we are. And this is, in general, I can't go into the details of what happened, but here's kind of where we are and what we got to do. And I need you to go up to these whiteboards, each one of your teams, and figure out how you're going to make XYZ happen. And you guys give me your plans. So they banded together and they made it work amazingly. So one thing I learned is, even though somebody is your friend and has worked with you for a long time and was a trusted member of your executive team, things can still go wrong. And you have to rip the Band-Aid off, and you have to work with your allies that are in your company to help you make that change happen. Because most people would sit there and go, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. He's my plant manager. He's my whatever. And there's 350 people. I can't do that. It'll hurt business. But it hurts business more if you do it wrong. So you might as well rip the Band-Aid off and go. Some other lessons I learned is just talking to your people. There's it's really important that they follow along with your mindset, and that they follow with you If you say walk with me instead of, go over there and do that, that's different. But if you say, hey, come with me, I want to show you something, they come. If somebody is sitting there, on a tailgate smoking a cigarette, not working, and you go over as the boss and pick up a shovel and start working, if that person doesn't get off their ass and go over there and pick up a shovel and start working with you, they get fired. Respect is really important. One thing I've learned, people that come in, like if I walk into a room, they stand up and they go, how are you today? What's going on? And they ask about me personally. They ask about my family. I ask about their family. I find out about my employees. And I've found that people quit bad managers. You have to be a good manager and listen to your people. It's more important than telling them what to do, is having you trust them and they trust you. So you come in and the first thing you say is, how was your weekend? What's going on? How's it going? And you're generally interested in what's going on. Doesn't matter what happens throughout the rest of the day. You may say, hey, I need XYZ. It's not a burden to them then. And another thing I've noticed is that when you compliment somebody, like when you say, you know what I really like about you, Akil, is that you're always smiling. Every time I see you, you brighten my day. You just are so happy all the time. What's your secret? How are you so happy? It makes me happy to see you happy. What happens to Akil next time I see him? He sees me, he smiles.
Be happy, yeah.
It's training, it's kindness, it's trust. It's like I told Akil, you're in safe hands with me. I really like you. So those are things that you learn as a parent, as a manager. And I also learned that shit doesn't smell any better with age. So, if you have a toxic employee, you need to cut ties. And the sooner the better, and you will get over it. You will find ways to get around it, because when you talk to your employees, nobody wants to work with an a-hole, So it's like when you say, hey guys, let's say I'm talking to my marketing team, who's the asshole in the group? They'll all point to one person, and it's that person that you've got to get rid of, because if you don't, all your good people will leave. Because the bad person becomes toxic, even if they're sarcastic or whatever they're doing, or if they're raunchy, like they're inappropriate, like raunchy's funny, but inappropriate's not funny. So, there's a line that has to be drawn. Some of the other things I've learned too, little nuggets, is watch the detail. When you're starting out, you have to be involved in every single detail. You're cleaning the floors, you're doing QuickBooks, you're paying bills, you're doing formulations, you're buying assets, you're doing everything. You're employing people, you're setting culture, you're doing all these things, right? But one time I was I was looking at my P&L and I'm like, well, wait a minute, why are we filling up our delivery trucks on Friday with gas? And then we don't work over the weekend. So why are we filling it up again on Monday? And then I started digging into it. I'm like, what the heck is going on? All of my trucks are getting refilled. There was a guy that worked for me that was in transportation that had keys to all the vehicles, and he was pimping it out on the weekends. So he was enterprise rental carring my vehicles for moving van purposes that he was profiting off of. And we had no idea. So that's where all the gas was going. So, you got to watch the details to catch that sort of stuff, or else it just poof, disappears on you and you don't even notice it. Nobody notices it. So, keep an eye on your fries, so to say.
Wonderful. Merrilee, Akhil here is pretty big on, water cooler conversations. Do you also support that? Do you think, two people hanging out for, some time? What are your views on that?
Okay, well, it depends. I'm not a fan of smoke breaks, and I'm not a fan of big long breaks at the water cooler either. Nobody's entitled to a big long break. You're entitled to get your work done. However, do I encourage people to talk? Yes. Do I encourage them to gossip? No. But does gossip happen in a small company? Absolutely. And I lived in Sweden, and they sometimes are called the Japanese of the North because a lot of times what they do is they'll sit there in a meeting with you and they're going, and you're like giving out the goals and whatever you want to have done. And they're, and then water cooler moment happens and they go and they, and they're talking about how horrible it is and how awful it is and what are they going to do? And they don't support it at all. So what do you have to do is you have to have allies on your team that are like the leaders. And I'm not saying they have to be the manager, but they are the leaders. They are your secret asset person. They may be the head of technology, or they may be a worker in technology, they may be a technician on your floor, but they carry weight with everybody on the team. So if they are complaining about something, you better be aware that everybody's going to hear about it. So what you do is you call in that person and you have a one-on-one with that person. And it's not a bad one-on-one. It's a get to know you one-on-one. It's like, what do you stand for? Why are you against X, Y, and Z? I hear that you're against it. Tell me your thought process. Tell me what's going on. Why do you feel that way? And let me tell you my thought process and why I feel the way I feel. And then you ask for help. You ask them, you're a leader. You're a leader in this group. And I rely on you. And it's very important what you say to everybody on the team. They care about you. They care about what you say. I care about you, even though we don't know each other that well. I care about what you say, and I really need your support. And I need to know what it takes to get that support. Why? And can you support me? So like work with them on how they can support you without getting egg on their face, how they can support you, and what's in it for them. Well, what's in it for them is favor from you. Because whenever they need help with something, they're going to come to you and say, hey, I have this problem. Or we have a problem on our team. It's toxic person A over here, and we need to do something about them. Because now they have your ear, whereas before they didn't. So there is some gaming going on there, but it's more of a family respect gaming and trust building.
So, Melly, let's talk about the org chart of BuzzBallz, if you can. Like, how is a company like BuzzBall structured? Uh,
Well, how I structured it was I had an executive leadership team, which was the head of marketing, the head of sales, the head of legal, the head of finance, the head of operations, the head of supply chain, and ordering, that kind of thing, um, and the head of international. So we would get together and we would talk about updates. We would have a monthly meeting just about what did you do this month and what kind of problems are you facing and how can the group help? And also just what's going on, just to hear from an overall perspective how the company's getting along. And then how are we doing on our goals that we set forth at the end of last year for this whole January 2025 through December of 2025? Here's what our goals were. Where are we? Take a pulse, and if there were any problems like, hey, I got to fire my plant manager and 350 people, how are we going to sort this out? We're going to not have sales for a month, so what are we going to do? Or COVID hit, we're all going to die. What are we going to do? Because we can't have employees standing on a production floor if they can't come to work because their kids can't go to school because they have to stay home and take care of their kids because they can't afford daycare for their kids or a nanny or somebody to come and watch their kids. and grandma's too old to use the internet and help the kid get online and, you know, figure out how to do their homework remotely. So, I mean, I started a school at BuzzBallz. I started a little elementary school, you know, so that my employees could come to work. They could drop off their kid at school, which was BuzzBallz. We called it the Nest. We fed them at 6 a.m., dropped them off. You know, they got fed. Their teacher helped them with homework, which was my teacher that I hired, a certified teacher. And then, you know, she helped them with everything through the day, helped them get online. We had an IT support. Parents could come have lunch with their kids, you know, just, you know, difficult times require everybody to lean in and figure out how to do things. Like, how do you make hand sanitizer? What do we do with that? Do we sell it? Do we give it away? You know, what's the right thing to do? And people feel good about helping other people, you know? So like when your team is in crisis, if you say, look, I need your help. Here's what I want to do. Can you help me? Have you ever had a little kid ask you, will you help me? I mean, when somebody asks you, will you help me? What's your response? No, I'm not going to help you. Or yes, okay, I'll help you. What do you need? You know, I'll get you that fruit roll up. Sure. You know, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And Mel, so let's talk about when you're getting acquired at the time of acquisition, what was the team size? And across different teams, you mentioned marketing, sales, legal, international operations. What was the strength? What would approximately be the strength be of the company?
The strength or the layout of the org chart?
The layout and the strength of each team, maybe. One is what's the overall headcount of the company and headcount at
Overall
each team level.
headcount, overall headcount when we were sold was around 1,000 employees. And those were primarily operations people. But we did have, you know, 20 some people on sales, 20 some people on marketing. We had a general counsel person that was legal. We had about 15 people in accounting, um, in finance. But then the rest, majority were operations people.
And so if someone is starting, let's say, alcohol or beverage brand or a cocktail mixer brand today, what advice would you like to give them? One you mentioned is packaging. What would be the
Packaging.
other? Yeah, what all advice would you like to give if someone is starting a brand today in 2025?
I would say do your research, do your homework, you know, Google everything, find out who else is in the space, where they've failed. Make sure you have your trademarks in place and any patents in place that you need before you get going. Make sure you get certified and you do things to the right level of fill. The other thing, go out there and do some research in the market and find out, you know, if you're going to make, I made this mistake. We made a bourbon bottle that was using the same vodka bottle that we had. Vodka bottles are tall and skinny. Bourbon bottles are short and fat. And what happened was we built a bourbon bottle that didn't fit on the shelf. So we had to like be placed with a different part of the category, instead of being placed with the bourbon on the bourbon shelf. So I would go out and do some research on the size of shelf that you're going to sell onto. And then I would create a sell sheet that reflects what you're selling and who the competitive market is, what your expected retail is, retail price, retail shelf price, suggested retail. I would list all my SKUs, you know, like how many flavors do you have? What does it look like? Where should it go on the shelf? Who should be next to it? And if I want to buy it, where do I go? You know, who should I go to? Um, you know, so those kinds of things, just the prep work of getting a brand ready. And then you need to find a distributor. A distributor is super critical. And it's hard to get a distributor because typically distributors don't want your brand. They don't want more to do because that means work for them. So you have to convince them that if they bring in your brand, you will do all the work. You will pay them for your work that you do for them. And they will get bonus based on how well you did as being a salesperson for your own company and getting that product to them. Once it's launched, it's got legs, it works, then they start believing in your brand. But that relationship takes time for you to develop with that distributor to where that distributor trusts you, that distributor knows you're buttering their bread, your distributor knows that your brand is good and that they're going to get turns, like you were talking about, velocity. We're going to sell 3 of these on the shelf per month, or I'm going to sell 3 of them per day, or, how much velocity am I going to get off this brand? How many turns am I going to get? What are my sales going to be like?
And how does this chain looks like? The distributor sells to retailer. Is it similar in FM? I mean, is it similar to other CPG brands, or is it different for alcohol or beverages,
Most
alcoholic
CPG
beverages?
brands don't have to go through a distributor. A lot of them don't have to use a distributor. They could use Amazon. They can go direct to consumer if they have a warehouse big enough and a team big enough to process that. And they have the computer generated way to charge a consumer. So like I get online to, let's say, Gourmetland, and I want to buy this vase or I want to buy this hummus or whatever it is, that I'm selling. They can get online to my website and maybe it's a Shopify or something like that. Somehow they can link in and buy it, but it's so much better for a grocery store. Let's say it's HEB or Kroger or Tom Plum or something like that. They want to get online. They want to buy in bulk. They want to buy pallet loads and they want it delivered and they want it distributed to all of their stores. So it's a different model. So you're going to go to, if it's a non-alcoholic brand, you're going to go to Cisco or US Foods or McLean's or somebody like that for a non-alc drink. Alcoholic drinks, there's limited options with distributors, and some are little and some are big. And most of them still expect you to do most of the work.
And can we talk about distributor margin, retailer margin, or that would in a general
Typically,
way?
like rule of thumb, for distributors in the alcohol world, when you start out, they're expecting about 30 points. And I'm talking margin points, not markup, margin. As you grow, as you develop volume with them, they'll come down to 20 to 25%. Grocery stores on the retail side, after the distributor has sold to them, grocery stores take a little bit less of a margin on non-alcohol brands, but on alcohol brands, they want a little bit more. They'll go 25 to 30 points. Depends on if it's a known brand or not. If it's a high volume brand and they can get 30 points on it, that's like a dream come true for them, and that's where they make their money.
Right. So around 50%, 50 to 60% goes to retailer plus distributor.
Yeah.
Right. I know we are nearing the end of time. I wanted to go in this supply chain side also, but
Okay. Quick question. I've got like 2 minutes.
okay. Can you just talk about the supply chain also? Like how does the supply chain looks like in
What
a
what I
alcoholic?
did was what I did was I channeled my choices for where people could buy my product. I did travel retail as a channel. They're gonna go on a bus, on a plane, on a train, on a whatever, a cruise ship. That's travel retail. I also had duty free as a channel. I also had on premise as a channel, which was the bars and restaurants. And then I had off premise as a channel. So each one of these channels that you go into, there's also direct to consumer, right? Amazon and things like that. So you pick a channel and then you hire salespeople to help sell into those categories. And then you come up with specific goals for each one of those channels and who's going to be the buyer, who's going to create the sell sheet that is attributed to that buyer, that pertains to that buyer, that has a competitive set for your product. And then you develop a strategy around that so that you can sell into it. And then you also know all the different layers. You know, you're the manufacturer, there's a distributor, there's a retailer. Do they have to buy it at one level down from that, or are they considered a retailer? You know, it just depends on how many layers you have in your industry.
Got it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Merrilee. Thank you for your time. We
Absolutely.
know that you'll continue to kick the balls. I really wanted to say that.
Thank you.
With
All
BuzzBallz
right.
and now with Gourmetland Foods. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you guys. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care.